Hello, everyone. I'm Tiffany Ferris, CEO of Palantir.net and a Drupal Association board member. I hope you are enjoying your DrupalCon. And as a reminder, I just want everyone to be aware that there's a link to access cart captioning pinned in the chat. It is my honor this morning to introduce our next keynote, Building Successful Mentorships for People of Color in Tech. And I'm here to send a little Chicago love this morning to Byron Woodfork. Byron is a senior software engineer who's passionate about working with awesome teams, writing quality code, public speaking, and mentoring. Byron has always held a strong passion for tinkering with technology, which has led him down his chosen career path. As a team lead, Byron enjoys helping mentor developers of all levels, working toward improving quality code and team processes and company culture. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Byron. Good morning.
Good morning. All right, I'm going to remove my headphones because I want to be able to hear myself talk, and I trust that I'll be able to see messages in the chat. All right, so let's get started. So I would like to pretty much just ask a question, or pretty much have a question for you to ask of yourself, really. And that's for those of you whom are tech leaders or just generally advocating for improving diversity within your workplace. Once you've improved on your number of diverse employees, then what? As a matter of fact, before you even step into the future of the if and when you ever actually improve upon your number of diverse employees, what are you doing right now to help your current employees of color progress in their career? How are you keeping yourself accountable to ensuring that their careers are on the right path? Ensuring that the people of color at your company right now are being cared for, are being listened to, are being seen for who they are. Hello, everyone. My name is Byron Woodfork. I am a senior software engineer. Pronouns are he, him. So if you have any questions, I will have Q&A toward the end of this talk. Q&A is actually one of my favorite parts, so I'm going to do my best to leave time for that Q&A toward the end of this talk. You can find me on the Twitterverse at Byron Woodfork. I tweet about a bunch of nothing, but please feel free to follow me. I am always down to interact with just about anyone and discuss anything in regards to tech or mentorship. So to get into some of the fun bits of this talk, at least in my opinion, I have to explain a bit about my background in tech and how I got to where I am today. And to do that, I have to take you all back in time to this beast of a computer. This compact desktop Presario was the first computer that my mom bought us when I was a kid. And I remember when she brought it home, I wanted to learn everything there was to learn about this thing. I wanted to take it apart. I wanted to put it back together. I wanted to learn the software, the ins and outs, everything that was to learn. And I remember I want to give a huge shout out to AOL for providing these free online internet discs. I remember like the mail carrier would drop these off at our mailbox like 20 at a time, and I'd take all of them. And this was my way of being connected to the world of the internet. And so fast forward a few years, I found myself in high school, and I had this passion for tech and this hobby, but I didn't know exactly where to take it. And so I didn't know what the next step was for me personally. And I remember a lot of my friends, as we were graduating high school, a lot of them were planning to go to college and stuff. So I was like, hey, I guess I'll try this college thing out and see how that goes. And I actually don't remember a ton about what I learned in college, unfortunately. College did not completely pan out for several different reasons. One, I wasn't very passionate about what it was that I was doing while I was in college. And I didn't know what the path to a career in tech looked like. Right. So I had this passion that I wanted to pursue, but no path forward. And as plenty of college dropouts go, I actually found myself with a job at the great Best Buy. And so I'm like at Best Buy selling computers. for a couple of years. And I remember one day I just got it in my mind. I realized Best Buy wasn't the place that I wanted to spend the rest of my life, right? This wasn't where I saw myself being in terms of pursuing a career in tech. And I remember thinking to myself, I said, okay, like, how can I break into the tech industry? So I remember thinking to myself, I used to be really good at designing MySpace page layouts. So trying to become a software developer should be about the par of that. So I started teaching myself how to code through various resources such as Code Academy, W3 Schools, and other websites as well. And I remember I came to the conclusion that teaching myself how to code and be a software developer was going to be a lot more difficult than I had previously anticipated. And so with that in mind, I started to reach out to my network of people. I wanted to see if I knew anyone who was either a software developer or knew someone that was in software development that could help me out. And lo and behold, one of my buddies was actually a software engineer at this consulting company called Eighth Light, based out of Chicago. And after chatting with him, I just kept reaching out to him. And fortunately, he kept responding. And I was like, hey, if this guy's going to keep reaching out, I'm going to keep asking him questions. And eventually, in us discussing software engineering and stuff like that, he actually told me about this awesome program that his company had, which was called an apprenticeship. And in this apprenticeship, what would happen was they would teach me software development and essentially give me a full-time job to work as a software engineer at this company. And on top of this, I didn't have to pay for the program. They were actually going to pay me to learn. And this sounded a little bit sketchy, but I really believed in my friend. So I believed that he would take me down the right path. So I went ahead and did it. And fortunately, that worked out. And going through this apprenticeship was one of the most difficult things that I've ever done in my life. And several years into my career, I'd asked myself this question: where is the gap for people of color in the tech industry, and how can I help close it? I wanted to figure out what was preventing more of us from breaking into the tech industry. And when we do make it in, what's preventing us from becoming senior engineers or becoming team leads or becoming directors at our respective companies? And in questioning this, I wanted to pinpoint what exactly worked for me. And these questions led to both the inspiration as well as the main thesis for this talk, which is that the solution to breaking the barrier for people of color in the tech industry is providing a strong network of mentors to support them. Before we begin the deep dive into mentorship, we must also take a look at some of the issues that's plagued the tech industry when we're talking about improving both diversity and inclusion for people of color in tech and building successful mentorship experiences for them. According to research, people of color in tech are far less likely to have access to a mentor, with Black people having the highest level of difficulty in finding a mentor. 63% of people who identify as Black in the study conducted by Trust Radius said that it was difficult for them to find a mentor at all, in comparison to just 28% of the white respondents. Research has also shown that hiring more people of color within the tech space is one of the top ways in which people of color in tech would like to be supported, and according to this research conducted by Trust Radius. Recruitment to build diverse teams is a necessary step in the process of improving. However, improving diversity does not guarantee improving inclusion. Improving diversity does not guarantee improving retention or proper career guidance. What comes after the recruitment process for people of color in tech? If you look at the next two highest points in the survey, you'll see that the next two important things that people of color would like to see in their tech company is a task force to challenge existing bias and racist behavior within the company, and supporting employees in one-on-one relationships. And I believe that through mentorship, you can create that advocacy. Through a network of mentors, you can create both a task force to combat existing bias as well as developing that one-on-one support for the people of color at your company. And when we built these mentorships, we have to keep in mind that mentoring someone who is a person of color comes with different challenges, as opposed to mentoring someone who identifies as the majority white male, for example. And these challenges are even more important to be made aware of when the mentorship is cross-race or cross-gender. So when building mentorships for people of color in tech, we can't go into it expecting that we're going to teach everyone the same way. We can't create mentorships for people of color with a path based on what's worked for all the white men in the industry in the past years. As mentors, you have the opportunity to improve the tech industry's patterns of mentorship. But first, you must understand where exactly the industry has been falling short in previous years. For years, our industry has been teaching and leading everyone the same way as they were taught. However, we all come from different backgrounds and have vastly different experiences in our journey through tech and business. So you can't assume that the teaching styles and the coaching styles that have worked for you and other non-people of color is going to work for the people of color in which you're attempting to mentor. Not only must we be willing to change the way that we mentor, we must also work to educate ourselves on the challenges that people of color face in the tech industry every day. This especially goes for those mentors who are in a mentorship that is cross-race or cross-gender. You must be willing to put in the work to learn about what biases people of color in tech face so that you can better advise them in their journey. Not only do we need to help our mentees grow from a technical standpoint and improve on their skills in that area, we also need to be able to connect with our mentees on a personal level and help them through areas in their careers and lives of which don't show up in the ones and zeros, being both a coach and a counselor. We must also work to grow our mentees' mentor network, introducing them to people who have influence within the company and people who they may also relate to, whether it's through other mentors being a wealth of knowledge or through other mentors having a closer shared experience on a personal level to our mentees. Growing your mentees' network of mentors has a multitude of benefits for both yourself and your mentee. You can allow yourself to be a bottleneck in your mentees' growth and progress by being their only mentor. And to be successful mentors, we must also provide clear feedback and a path forward for our mentees' career progression. This may seem like one of the most obvious points to make, but it's very common that people of color in tech aren't provided with reasoning as to why they weren't promoted or why someone thinks their performance isn't up to par or how they can progress forward within their company. And when providing feedback, you must also make sure to check yourself on your own personal bias. Your mentor network can also help you with this, and we'll get into that a bit later. First, we're going to learn a bit about the career progression for people of color in business and what that can look like for them. So I strongly believe in studying existing patterns and doing our best to rely on documented research. One of my favorite studies on the career progression for people of color in the professional field is this study called The Truth About Mentoring Minorities by the author David A. Thomas. In this study, the author tracked the career progression of several people of color at several US-based companies. And one of the key findings from this research revolved around the speed of which white professionals were promoted to higher levels of leadership at a faster pace than their peers of Black professionals or people of color. The study found that white professionals were typically placed on a fast track in their career development to be promoted at higher leadership positions, whereas people of color in the study were more likely to plateau in their careers and get stuck in middle management positions for much longer. The study found that whites were promoted at a faster rate based on their perceived potential, whereas people of color had to show a longer and sustained track record of solid performance over time compared to their white peers. As a result of this, people of color in the study feeling overlooked and treated unfairly in comparison to their white peers, several of them would mentally disconnect from their work, resulting in performance drop-off or flat out leaving their respective companies. In my experience, many people of color in tech have gone through a similar issue, whereas you're putting in the work over multiple years thinking you're on the path to success, but that promotion or that level up simply never happens. This is how companies lose employees, or employees simply lose interest in their daily work and helping companies achieve their overall goals. I remember one of my friends came to me pretty distraught. She had recently been passed over for a promotion, and this person, she identified as a woman of color, and she told me, like, one of the execs at the company was actually grooming her to become a director for the company. So for several months, she was handling the duties of a director level employee within her department, working long hours for months on end and receiving exemplary remarks in her performance reviews in the process. And without notice, the company decided to go in a different direction in their decision for the director position. They decided to hire from outside of the company. And of course, this was another white guy placed in a leadership position, whereas her having assumed the duties of this position for months and then being passed over for it. So this, of course, resulted in my friend becoming disconnected mentally from their work and eventually leaving the company. And it's moments like these where executive leadership will toss up their hands and say, I don't know why this person left, or why our most senior positions are only held by white men. Like, it's pretty obvious. You're creating this system. There are countless stories in tech similar to this, whereas women and people of color get passed over for promotions. According to a survey done by the Kapoor Center on why underrepresented groups leave their companies, women of color reported the highest rates of being passed over for promotion at 30% in comparison to around 20% for most others. Going back to the case study that I mentioned earlier about how people of color at these companies would plateau in middle management positions, the correlation to this study in tech can look something like people of color being held in middle engineering and design positions within their company and not being promoted at the same speed as their white peers into either leadership positions or positions that hold more responsibility on technical decision making. The research from the study found that while there were definitely people whom tapered off due to feeling like they were being treated unfairly, there was a noticeable pattern for the people of color in this case study at these companies who decided to stick around and actually stayed connected to their work. These people had something in common: a strong network of mentors to support them in their growth. So while they were still being held at these middle management positions for longer than their white peers, they were eventually able to break that leadership promotion barrier. Having a network of mentors to support people of color in tech is vital to their career growth. Mentors can help provide the necessary guidance and safe haven to help people of color feel connected to the company and their work, and assurance that they're on the right path. The solution to breaking the barrier for people of color in the tech industry is providing a strong network of mentors to support them. There are numerous benefits to working with your mentee to build a mentor network for them. And one huge benefit to building a network of mentors is having a distributed network of people that your mentee can rely on. Say, for example, you're mentoring someone at your company, and for whatever reason, you leave the company. Then what? You've created a single point of failure in your mentor-mentee relationship. Sure, you can still work to help instruct them in their career journey when you're not there, but who's going to advocate for them from within the company? The solution to this problem is to build a mentor network. Now, this network could be comprised of just a few others, but the importance is that your mentee has someone to fall back on if for whatever reason you aren't there. This also allows you to bring in extra help, freeing up your time to work on other things so you don't have to answer your mentees' questions all the time. Another amazing benefit to creating a mentor network is that it gives you the chance and opportunity to create diverse mentorships. While you yourself may not be able to directly relate to your mentee on a personal level when it comes to their race and gender, that doesn't mean you can't connect them with someone who does. And this is especially an amazing opportunity for those of you whom identify as the majority at your tech companies, AKA white dudes, let's be real. Building a diverse mentor network allows you not only to create diversity through race and gender, but also through diversity of teaching styles and learning styles and diversity of background and creating that representation for your mentee. For example, if your mentee comes from a non-traditional background in design or computer science, this poses as an opportunity for you to recruit other mentors who share a similar background and may have another type of connection to your mentee that you may not share personally. When you build your mentor network, grab folks who have different learning or teaching styles from yourself. When I'm mentoring someone, if I see that the numerous ways of which I've attempted to explain something to my mentee aren't landing, I can reach out to my network of mentors and see if someone else would like to lend a helping hand and teach it in their way. Building this network also gives your mentee access to people at certain levels and areas within the company that they may not normally have come in contact with. I remember when I was just like a couple of years into my career, my mentor, or not a couple of years, a couple of months, my mentor, he said to me, "Hey, Byron, do you know what the concept of scope is in Ruby?" And at the time I didn't, I was pretty ignorant. And he was like, "Okay, sweet. I set up a one-on-one for you and with you and the CEO of the company. He's going to explain to you what scope is in Ruby." And to me, this was just huge. This was crazy. So I was able to have this one-on-one interaction with someone so high up, and that actually created a bond between me and the CEO. And we actually, to this day, still talk, even though I'm not at that company anymore. And connections like this can not only build your mentee's network from a mentor standpoint, but it also helps provide them with a means of sponsorship and with other higher ups in the company, and ultimately can equate to both parties feeling comfortable reaching out to one another. Another pattern that's been documented in successful mentorships for people of color in tech, or just people of color in general, was that the mentor-mentee relationships that saw the most growth and held the strongest connections were the ones where mentors and mentees openly discuss issues in regards to race or gender and how they affected the mentee's experience within the company. The relationships where mentees felt more comfortable opening up about their personal experiences and concerns that set them apart from the majority demographic at their companies led to a greater connection between both parties. This also led to the mentees breaking that promotion barrier. Whereas mentees who would plateau in middle management positions were only receiving mentorship that was purely instructional, meaning they never connected with their mentor to discuss what set them apart from the company's majority and the obstacles they faced based on those differences. And that brings us to our next point. Along with building our mentees' network of mentors, we must also be both a coach and counselor to our mentees. And to be a coach means giving technical advice, explaining how to do something. So things like teaching someone the best practices for writing quality code or good UX design or practicing agile methodologies. And so while counseling means talking about the experience of doing something and offering emotional support in the process. So when someone comes to you and opens up about how frustrating a particular problem that they're experiencing at work has been for them, and you provide them with emotional support in the midst of that interaction. Oh, okay. I just saw a question pop up and it threw me off. I'm gonna answer that in a bit. A big part of being a counselor is making sure that you're educated on the various issues that someone who is a person of color in tech faces on a regular basis. This intel would help you in giving advice that is more geared towards your mentee. In order to be successful mentors to people of color in tech, we must also play the role of coach and counselor, because too often people of color in tech feel like outcasts because we feel as if there's no one at our companies for us to relate to. And while there may not be many people at the company that look like us, that doesn't mean that you as a mentor can't be there to emotionally support your mentees throughout their mentorship. And a common question that I get is, how do I transition from being purely coaching to being that of both a coach and a counselor? And the key here really is building trust with your mentee. In my experience, women and people of color can be reserved in what they're willing to discuss up front with someone in work in regards to race and gender. And simply saying, hey, I believe in diversity and inclusion and increasing these numbers isn't going to build that trust with someone who is a person of color in your company. So to answer this question, I can give a bit of advice tailored to, or I would have to tailor this advice to the person that I would be giving it to specifically, but I can give you a couple of examples that have worked for me in building that trust to make that transition. So one thing that I've noticed while I've been mentoring people who identify as women in the tech space is that oftentimes on software engineering teams, they get stuck with the work of doing documentation work, right? So, and in me like having these discussions with my mentees, I'll like find out what sort of work they're doing, and I will identify and like have this one-on-one discussion with them to learn why they ended up doing this documentation work instead of working on more technical stories. Right. So in me finding this out, I do that to learn, but also I want to try to steer them toward the path of doing more technical work. While that documentation work is important, and I will inform them of this, I'll be like, hey, so I'm not sure if you're aware, but this is like a really common stereotype and scenario that women tend to find themselves in. So I'd like to advocate for you to do more technical work within this team and try to divide that documentation work among the other teammates. And so things like this can help in building trust. And another example that can essentially help you in building trust is checking in with your mentee when you realize that events that are going on in the real world may have a huge effect on them emotionally. And most importantly, listen to your mentee. Something that's really difficult for a lot of non-people of color to understand is when someone starts to vent to you and let you know that what they really think about a particular situation or topic as it relates to race or gender is that it's not your time to speak. Let them have the floor and just listen and digest. You don't have to say much. Just let them know that you're there to support them in whatever way you can. And after listening and having digested what's been said, you can tell your mentee, okay, given the obstacles that you've expressed to me, let me work on tailoring my advice to your particular situation so that we can work around these obstacles together. Now, granted, like I said, these things have been things that have worked for me. I would have to tailor that advice to certain individuals given certain situations, but it's just another way that has worked for me in building that trust up with my mentee. And another way to build up trust in having a successful mentorship is providing quality feedback to our mentees. In order to be a successful mentor for people of color in tech, you must work towards providing quality feedback and a clear path forward for your mentees, because too often people of color suffer from lack of constructive feedback. And this leaves them feeling disconnected from both their mentees or mentors and their company. In a survey conducted by on the biggest barriers for women in tech when it came to being promoted and having no clear path forward, by far having no clear path forward was the highest ranking issue that a lot of women in color were experiencing in their tech careers. And having mentioned this, like, there are several reasons for this, including but not limited to gender bias and racism in many cases. But very often, this is the case of what's known as protective hesitation. Protective hesitation is the failure to give feedback due to fear of being perceived as racist or sexist. You essentially refrain from giving someone of another race or gender feedback because you're afraid of either offending them or how it'll make you look personally. And as mentors, we must make ourselves aware of these scenarios and work towards figuring out how we can avoid these pitfalls and better support our mentees. So something that has helped me personally in avoiding protective hesitation is relying on my mentor network. So if, say for instance, I'm like planning to give my mentee some feedback or constructive criticism, I can go to the network and say, hey, is this feedback valid? Is it constructive? And how would you phrase this to make it the most effective for our mentee? And in doing so, I can be open and honest with the other mentor stating, hey, I'm not sure if this is a form of bias on my part, but here's some feedback that I had about our mentee's performance. Is it just me, or do you all feel this way as well? And so before constructing that feedback, you can ask your network of mentors what they think about your mentee's performance in certain areas. And sometimes as mentors, we can get caught up in critiquing our mentees because the way we did something isn't how, or the way they did something isn't how we would have done it. But because that's not how you would have done something doesn't mean it's the wrong way to do it. It's just something new to you. And that's the magic of building diverse teams. Having a diverse mentor group to rely on can help us in eliminating certain types of hidden bias and help us in delivering clear and effective feedback. And I'm pretty sure I am a little over time, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut to the end. So in wrapping up, oh, I'm good? Okay, cool. Melissa says I'm good. So we've touched upon how people of color progress throughout their careers and some of the struggles that they face. And we've also learned about building a diverse network of mentors and how that can be vital in our mentees' career progression. We've learned about how we can be both a coach and a counselor for our mentees, and we learned about some of the challenges that come along with cross-race and cross-gender mentorships. And if you're thinking to yourself, this is a lot. Yeah, it is, but this is how we grow and develop ourselves. When we're adding layers of complexity to our software systems architecture, we do so because it's necessary to account for the ever-changing business requirements. And making these adjustments to the way that we mentor is necessary to account for the change in the shift in the goals within the tech industry to improve diversity, inclusion, and sponsorship within our companies. And to conclude, I'd like to say, to be a successful mentor, you also have to be willing to give yourself some grace. Mentoring is really hard work and you're going to get things wrong. But the important thing is that you learn from your mistakes and improve upon yourself in the future. And that is all that I have for you all today. I actually had like a few other case examples and scenarios that I wanted to go through to make some points hit harder, but I have to do that in a future talk because I was like going crazily over time. But let's see if we can answer a couple of questions. All right, so a question, how do you bring people into a mentor network? What kind of prep, communication, guidance do you provide? Good question. So typically when I'm recruiting people for my mentor network, I will look at a few different things. One, is there anyone who I can grab that my mentee can more closely identify with than myself? I also look at what their learning experience has been throughout their careers and what their teaching styles are, and essentially how they, and also what position they are within the company. I try to, to the best of my ability, grab people from different levels with various teaching styles and whatnot. So that gives my mentee diverse experience in terms of how they can be taught and led and all that good stuff. And in terms of what kind of prep, communication, and guidance would I provide? Prep, communication, and guidance. So I will be pretty upfront with what the goals are that I have for this mentorship experience. So the goals that both myself and the mentee have like put forth that like they would like to achieve and I would like to see for them. So I'll discuss that with a network of mentors. And we typically will like communicate via Slack, async communication, and from time to time, like pop on a video chat to discuss how our mentees' progress in their career has been going. And oh yeah, let's see. How would you go about establishing a mentor network in a smaller company? Sweet. So this is one of my favorite questions. And if I had more time, I would have touched upon this as well. So one of my favorite things is actually advising people to reach out to people from outside of the company. So a lot of people will have issues with their company. Either they're like, they throw their hands up and say, hey, our company is just like full of like white dudes and we don't have a diverse network of mentors to like grab. You don't have to just rely on the people at your company. You can reach to people that are outside of your company by going through or going to community events, reaching out on social media and saying like, hey, I'm looking for people that are interested in helping me mentor someone for like a few months or whatever the case may be. And it can be like a low commitment, right? But something where you can like create that FaceTime between them and your mentee can be huge in their career. And it provides you with the ability to create a more diverse network of mentors when you don't have that opportunity off the bat at your company. And I think that is the last question. Oh, another question. What are some of your favorite groups for volunteer mentoring for those of us in smaller orgs that want to help our community but don't have the internal need? Some of my favorite groups. So one of my favorite groups is a nonprofit that I've actually organized and founded called People of Color Code. If you Google People of Color Code, you can like find our meetup page. And you can reach out to us. There's also like a ton of other organizations out there as well. If you want to like reach out to me, I can like try to like pull some names out of a hat because there are just so many. But yeah, so that is one resource where you can reach out to people, and that is one that I am closely connected with. Any other questions? Sweet. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to this talk. As I said, I wish I could dive like super deep into some of the other case and scenarios, but that'll have to be for a future talk. Please feel free to follow me on the Twitterverse. Feel free to reach out to me via email if you'd like to chat. I am always on Twitter and always down to talk about mentoring as well as just general tech things. And that is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much.